I grew up in a family where favoritism wasn't just subtle, it was a way of life. My name is Daniel Carter, and I was the third of 4 children. My oldest brother, Matthew, was the golden child, the pride of the Carters. My younger sister, Emily, was the princess, showered with affection and gifts. Then there was me, the quiet one, the workhorse. From as early as I can remember, my parents treated me differently. When I was 10, my father put me to work at the small, family-owned bakery while Matthew was at soccer camp and Emily was getting ballet lessons. I didn't complain then. I thought maybe hard work would earn me love. But instead, the years piled up, and with each one I realized I wasn't a son in their eyes. I was free labor. By the time I was 18, while my friends were applying for colleges, I was stuck behind the counter at the bakery, kneading dough, sweeping floors, and smiling at customers. Meanwhile, my parents paid for Matthew's tuition at a prestigious university in Boston. They bought Emily a brand new car when she turned 17. And me? I didn't even get a birthday cake unless I baked it myself. I told myself it didn't matter, that one day my hard work would pay off. But that was before Claire walked into my life. It was a rainy afternoon when she came into the bakery, shaking off her umbrella and brushing damp hair from her face. She was beautiful, not in a flashy, look-at-me kind of way, but in a quiet, graceful way that drew me in instantly. Her eyes were warm hazel, her smile effortless, and when she ordered a simple croissant and coffee, I found myself fumbling with the register. "You must be new here," she teased when I stumbled over the price. I laughed nervously. Not new, just distracted, I guess. She smiled in a way that made the bakery lights seem brighter. "Well, distraction suits you." That moment stayed with me. Claire started coming in every few days, sometimes just for coffee, sometimes for a slice of pie. We began talking first small talk about the weather, then deeper things. I learned she was a student at the local college, studying literature. She dreamed of writing novels one day. With her, I felt seen for the first time in my life. She didn't know me as the forgotten Carter sibling or the unpaid worker. She knew me as Daniel, the guy who made her laugh, the guy who always remembered how she liked her coffee. But the more time I spent with her, the more my parents noticed, and not in a good way. One evening, after closing, I walked into the kitchen to find my mother scowling at me. "You're getting distracted," she said sharply, wiping her flour-covered hands. "We can't afford that. Matthew needs money for his internship, and Emily wants dance classes in the city. You're supposed to be helping this family, not chasing after some girl." Her words stung. I wanted to shout back, to tell her I was more than a servant, more than a wallet for my siblings' dreams. But instead, I swallowed it, just like I always did. But Claire wasn't so easily ignored. She noticed the exhaustion in my eyes, the way I avoided talking about my family. One night, as we sat by the river, she turned to me and asked softly, "Daniel, why do you let them treat you like this?" I froze. No one had ever said it so plainly before. "Because they're my family," I whispered, "and family is supposed to stick together." Her eyes filled with something between pity and frustration. She reached for my hand, her fingers warm against mine. "Daniel, family isn't supposed to break you to build someone else." Those words planted a seed inside me, one that would grow into something unstoppable. The breaking point came a few weeks later. It was Emily's birthday, and my parents threw her a lavish party in our backyard. They hired a catering service, decorated the place with fairy lights, even rented a photo booth. And me, I wasn't a guest. I was the help. While Emily unwrapped a set of diamond earrings and Matthew boasted about his summer in Europe, I was refilling drinks and carrying trays of food. No one thanked me. No one even looked at me. And then, as I carried out a cake, one I had baked from scratch, of course, I saw Claire standing at the edge of the yard. She had come to surprise me, but instead she had walked into my nightmare. Her eyes met mine, and I saw it: anger, sadness, disbelief. She didn't belong in this scene, and neither did I. When the guests started singing for Emily, I put the cake down on the table and walked away. Not just from the party, not just from my parents, but from everything. That night, I packed a small bag. Claire found me by the river again, sitting with my head in my hands. "Daniel," she whispered, crouching beside me, "enough is enough." And for the first time in my life, I agreed. That was the night I decided to change everything. I didn't know how yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let my family keep using me as their personal servant. And what I did next would leave them in chaos they never expected. When I woke the next morning, the house was silent. For once, there were no orders shouted from the kitchen, no list of chores taped to the refrigerator with my name scribbled across it. I stood in my small bedroom, staring at the bag I had packed the night before. It wasn't much, just a couple changes of clothes, a notebook, and a picture of me and Claire at the river. That photo was the only proof that I had ever been happy. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to ask for permission. I wasn't going to wait for someone else to give me a place at the table. I was walking away. I slipped out of the house before sunrise, the cool air biting at my skin. My footsteps felt heavy at first, each one like a betrayal, but with every step away from that house, I felt lighter. When I reached the main road, I saw Claire's old, beat-up car waiting. She rolled down the window, her hair a mess from the wind, her smile soft but filled with concern. "You ready?" she asked. I hesitated. Ready? I wasn't sure. I had no money, no plan, and no clue what tomorrow would look like. But as I looked at her, I realized I was ready for something, ready to stop living like a shadow. "Yeah," I said, climbing in. "Let's go." Claire drove us to her apartment on the other side of town. It was small, just one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and walls decorated with fairy lights and stacks of books. But to me, it was a palace. "You can stay here," she said, setting my bag down by the couch. "At least until you figure things out." Her kindness nearly broke me. No one had ever given me something without demanding more in return. "Claire," I whispered, my voice cracking, "I don't want to be a burden." She turned to me, her eyes fierce. "Daniel, you've carried everyone else's weight for years. Let me carry you for once." That was the moment I realized I wasn't just falling for Claire. I had already fallen. The first few days were strange. I didn't wake up to a to-do list or the smell of bread baking at dawn. I didn't have to wipe down counters or scrub dishes until my hands bled. Instead, I found myself wandering the city with Claire. She took me to a little bookstore she loved, where the owner let us read for free. We ate hot dogs from food trucks and laughed when mustard dripped down my shirt. We sat on benches and watched the world go by, and for once I felt like I was part of it. But freedom comes with a price. By the third day, reality hit me hard. I had no job, no income, and I knew my parents would never let me go without a fight. It didn't take long for them to find me. The call came one evening while Claire and I were cooking pasta. My phone lit up with my mother's name. I hesitated, but Claire urged me to answer. The moment I pressed the button, her voice exploded through the speaker. "Daniel Carter, where the hell are you?" I held the phone away from my ear, my stomach twisting. "You think you can just walk out on us? After everything we've done for you? Matthew has bills to pay, Emily needs her classes, and you think you can just abandon your family?" My hands trembled. For years I had swallowed these words. For years I had believed them. But now, with Claire's steady hand resting on mine, something inside me snapped. "No, Mom," I said quietly. "I didn't abandon the family abandoned me." There was silence on the other end, followed by a sharp, bitter laugh. "You're ungrateful," she hissed. "You'll come crawling back when you realize you can't survive without us." But this time, I didn't believe her. I ended the call. Claire squeezed my hand, her eyes searching mine. "Daniel, are you okay?" I nodded slowly, but deep down, fear was coiling in my chest. What if she was right? What if I couldn't survive on my own? The very next morning, I decided to prove, to myself, to Claire, to everyone, that I could. I walked into a local cafe with a sign that read "Help Wanted." My hands shook as I filled out the application, but by the end of the week, I had my first paycheck. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time, I wasn't working for free. I wasn't lining someone else's pockets while being told I should be grateful. When I handed Claire a small bouquet of flowers I bought with that paycheck, she smiled so wide it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "This," she said softly, holding the flowers to her chest, "is the start of your real life." And she was right. But freedom wasn't going to be that simple. My parents weren't about to let their free labor disappear without a fight. The storm was coming, and I had no idea just how far they would go to drag me back. Life with Claire was far from perfect, but for the first time, it was mine. I worked shifts at the cafe, came home to her laughter, and fell asleep knowing I wasn't chained to my parents' endless demands anymore. But freedom has a way of drawing enemies. One eve, she reached across the table, her fingers wrapping around mine. "Then I'm with you, every step." Filing the paperwork felt surreal. I had to recount every year, every hour I'd worked without pay. The nights I'd baked bread until sunrise. The days I'd scrubbed pans while my siblings opened gifts. Each memory was like reopening a wound, but also like sharpening a weapon. When I handed the folder to Mr. Hayes, he gave me a firm nod. "Once this goes through, they'll know you're serious. Be prepared, Daniel. Families like yours, they don't back down easily." He was right. A week later, my parents called me. Not to plead, not to apologize, but to rage. "You ungrateful boy," my father's voice thundered through the phone. "After everything we've given you, you dare to drag our name through the mud." "Everything you've given me," I said, my hand shaking. "You gave Matthew tuition. You gave Emily a car. You gave me chains. I'm done." Before he could reply, I ended the call. I thought that would be the worst of it. I was wrong. 2 nights later, I returned to Claire's apartment after a late shift to find her standing in the kitchen, her face pale. "What's wrong?" I asked, rushing to her side. She held out an envelope. My stomach dropped when I saw the handwriting. My mother. Inside was a single letter. The words burned into me. "If you go through with this, Daniel, you're dead to us. Don't bother coming back. We'll cut you out of the will. You'll be nothing." For a moment, the room spun. Dead to them. I knew it was just words, a threat, but deep down, some small, wounded part of me still wanted their love. Claire touched my cheek, grounding me. "Daniel, you're not nothing. You're everything to me. And if they can't see your worth, that's their loss. You're building your own legacy now. Don't let them steal that from you." Her voice was steady, but her eyes shone with tears. In that moment, I realized something. Losing them didn't scare me anymore. Losing her did. We clung to each other that night, whispering promises. That no matter what happened, we'd stand together. That love was worth more than blood. That sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. The court date loomed closer. My parents didn't show up in person. They sent a lawyer instead. Matthew and Emily weren't there either. Sitting in that courtroom, my hands trembling, I told the truth. I described every year of work, every sacrifice, every humiliation. My voice cracked, but I kept speaking because for the first time my voice mattered. When it was over, the judge didn't give a final ruling yet. It would take weeks. But walking out of that courtroom with Claire's hand in mine, I felt victorious already. I had stood up, I had spoken. And no matter what came next, I wasn't their silent servant anymore. But the fight wasn't finished. That evening, as Claire and I sat on the fire escape, her head resting on my shoulder, my phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "We need to talk, alone, tomorrow." I stared at the screen, my heart thudding. Claire frowned. "What is it?" I showed her the message. She bit her lip. Do you think she wants to help you? I shook my head slowly. I don't know, but with my family, help always has a price. And deep down, I had a sinking feeling. Whatever Emily wanted, it was going to change everything. I barely slept the night before meeting Emily. Her message replayed in my head on a loop. We need to talk, alone, tomorrow. I hadn't seen her since I left the house, since that night I walked away from Emily's birthday party. Back then, she was the princess, the golden child, the one who got everything while I worked in the shadows. Why now? Why reach out when I'd already drawn my battle lines? The next afternoon, I met her at a quiet park near the old high school. The air smelled faintly of cut grass, and children's laughter echoed from the playground, though the space between us felt heavy and tense. Emily was already there, sitting stiffly on a bench. She looked different, her hair tied back, no makeup, her usually flawless expression cracked by something raw. Daniel, she said softly when I approached. Emily, I replied, keeping my distance. What do you want? She flinched, as though she wasn't used to hearing steel in my voice. For years, I had been the brother who obeyed. The one who nodded, smiled, stayed quiet. Not anymore. I know about the lawsuit, she said quickly, her eyes darting around. Mom and Dad are furious. Matthew too. They say you're destroying the family. I barked out a bitter laugh. Funny, they've been destroying me for years. Guess it's about time I return the favor. Emily winced, wringing her hands together. Daniel, I didn't come here to fight. I came because you need to know the truth. My stomach tightened. What truth? She hesitated, her eyes flicking to mine and then away. For a moment I saw fear, real fear in her expression. Mom and Dad never planned to treat us equally, she whispered. It was always Matthew first, me second, and you. Her voice cracked. You were never meant to have anything. The words hit like a punch to the chest. What are you talking about? I demanded, my heart hammering. Emily swallowed hard, tears forming in her eyes. Dad told us years ago. He said you were the worker, the one who'd hold the family together. He said Matthew had the brains, I had the charm, and you were the backbone. But a backbone doesn't get thanks. It just carries the weight. Her voice shook. They decided your role before you even had a chance. I staggered back, my throat dry. My whole childhood, the endless chores, the free labor, the neglect, it hadn't been neglect at all. It had been designed. Like I was never a son, just a tool. You knew, I whispered, staring at her. You knew all along. Emily's tears spilled over. At first, I didn't understand, but as we grew up, I saw it. I saw how they worked you to the bone, and I let it happen because it benefited me. Her voice broke. I'm sorry, Daniel. I was selfish. I didn't stop it. I didn't fight for you. I let them take everything from you while I got everything I wanted. Anger and grief churned inside me, twisting my chest. For years, I had told myself maybe my parents just didn't see me. Maybe they didn't realize how much they were hurting me. But no, it was deliberate, a role carved into my bones. And my siblings had played along. I turned away, my fists clenched. You're telling me this now, after all these years. After all the nights I worked until my hands bled while you opened birthday presents and smiled for pictures. Her sob cut through the air. I don't want to lose you, Daniel. I don't want to be part of their game anymore. Please, believe me, I want to make it right. I spun back, my voice trembling with rage. Make it right. You can't give me back the years I lost, Emily. You can't erase what they made me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the weight of everything unsaid. Finally, she whispered, at least now you know the truth. Whatever you do next, just know you were never the problem. You were never nothing. I walked away without answering. My mind was a storm. Claire found me at the cafe later, sitting at a corner table long after my shift had ended. She slid into the seat beside me, her hand finding mine. What happened? She asked gently. I told her everything. Every word Emily had confessed. Claire's eyes darkened with anger, but her grip on my hand only tightened. "They tried to define you," she whispered. "But they don't get to decide who you are, Daniel. Not anymore. You're not a backbone, you're a man, and you're mine." Her words wrapped around me like a lifeline. For the first time, I realized my family hadn't just stolen my labor, they had stolen my identity, and now I was taking it back. But as much as Emily's confession shook me, it also planted a seed of fear. If my parents had planned my role all along, what else had they planned? What else were they willing to do to keep me in chains? The truth Emily revealed gnawed at me for days. My whole life hadn't been a series of accidents, it had been a blueprint. My parents had drawn the lines, and I had colored inside them, blind and obedient. But not anymore. Claire kept reminding me of that. Her gentle presence was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. When I faltered, she steadied me. When the memories clawed at my chest, she whispered, "You're not their tool, Daniel, you're you." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. But my family wasn't finished. The next blow came in a way I never expected. I was at the cafe one morning, the hiss of the espresso machine filling the air, when Louis, my manager, pulled me aside. His brow was furrowed, his usually warm smile gone. "Daniel," he said slowly, "I got a call today from someone claiming to be a concerned parent." My chest tightened. "What did they say?" He sighed. "They said you were unstable, that you abandoned your family, stolen from them, and couldn't be trusted around money or customers." The words stung like hot iron. My hands trembled, fury bubbling under my skin. It was them, my parents, I know it. Louis studied me for a moment, then shook his head. "I don't believe a word of it. You've been one of the best workers I've had. But Daniel, if they're trying to ruin your reputation, you need to be careful. They're playing dirty." That night, I paced the apartment, my thoughts a whirlwind. Claire sat on the couch, watching me with worried eyes. "They're trying to break you," she said firmly. "First with that letter, then with gossip, and now this. They know they can't control you anymore, so they're trying to destroy you." I stopped, my chest heaving. "But why, Claire? Why am I such a threat to them? Why can't they just let me go?" "Ruined forever." She shifted closer, her hand pressing against my chest. "Then we rebuild, together. Because you're not the same boy they broke, you're stronger. And even if the world thinks otherwise, I'll always know who you are." Tears stung my eyes. I kissed her forehead, whispering, "I don't deserve you." She smiled softly. "You deserve everything." The final confrontation came sooner than I expected. 1 week later, as I left the cafe, Matthew was waiting outside. No smirk this time. His face was pale, his eyes frantic. "We need to talk," he muttered, grabbing my arm. I yanked free. "I've got nothing left to say to you." "Please," he hissed, glancing around. "It's bad, Daniel. The bakery, it's collapsing. Debts, lawsuits, unpaid bills. Mom and Dad are drowning. They're desperate. If you don't drop your case, they're going to." He stopped, swallowing hard. I froze. "They're going to what?" His eyes met mine, and for once I saw fear, real fear. "They're going to drag Claire into it, publicly. They're going to spread lies about her, ruin her name, if that's what it takes to make you back down." My blood turned to ice. "You tell them," I said, my voice trembling with rage, "that if they touch her name, I'll bury them. Legally, publicly. I don't care what it costs, I'll make sure the world knows the truth." Matthew's face twisted, a war between loyalty and desperation playing out in his eyes. Then he muttered, "You've changed, little brother." I stepped closer, my voice low and steady. "No, Matthew, I finally became who I was meant to be." That night I told Claire everything. Her eyes widened, but instead of fear, I saw fire. "Then let them try," she said fiercely. "I won't hide, I won't run. They want to drag me down, they'll have to face me too." Her courage shook me. She wasn't just my anchor anymore. She was my partner in this war. And together, we were ready for the final battle. The courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and nerves. My palms were damp as I sat beside Mr. Hayes, the manila folder of evidence between us. Claire sat in the gallery, her eyes locked on me like a lighthouse guiding me through the storm. Across the aisle sat my parents. My father looked rigid in a dark suit, his jaw clenched. My mother wore a dress that screamed money we both knew they didn't have. And next to them, Matthew leaned back casually, his arms crossed, his smirk plastered on like armor. Emily wasn't there. That spoke volumes. When the judge called the case, I rose, my legs trembling. My parents' lawyer opened with venom, painting me as an ungrateful son, a lazy dropout, a boy who had bitten the hands that fed him. Mr. Carter was given shelter, food, and family support his entire life, the lawyer sneered. And how does he repay his parents? By suing them, dragging their good name through the mud. The words cut, but Claire's steady gaze held me together. Then it was my turn. Mr. Hayes guided me through the testimony, but most of it came straight from me, raw, unpolished, true. I spoke of the bakery mornings at age 10, when my friends went to school while I scrubbed pans. I spoke of my siblings' gifts, their tuition, their cars, while I was told hard work was my reward. I spoke of every birthday I baked my own cake, every holiday I worked while the others celebrated. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. They didn't see me as a son, I said, staring at the judge, my throat tight. They saw me as labor, as a tool. And when I finally found the courage to leave, they didn't try to understand. They tried to destroy me. Even her. I turned slightly, my eyes flicking to Claire, who sat with tears on her cheeks. They threatened the only person who's ever truly loved me. That isn't family. That's control. And I won't live under it anymore. The courtroom was silent when I finished. My father erupted. He shot to his feet, his face red. Lies, all of it. We gave you everything, Daniel. You're just too blind to see it. The judge banged his gavel sharply. Sit down, Mr. Carter. But my father kept shouting, his mask cracking. Ungrateful, worthless. You'll crawl back when she leaves you, just like I said. That's when Claire stood. Her voice rang through the courtroom, steady and fierce. He's not worthless, she said, her eyes blazing. He's stronger than all of you combined, and he will never crawl back because he's not yours to control anymore. He's his own man, and he's mine. Gasps rippled through the room. My chest burned with something I couldn't name. Love, pride, vindication. The judge ordered a recess, the tension too thick to ignore. Outside in the hallway, Claire slipped her hand into mine. You did it, she whispered. You finally said it all. I swallowed hard. No matter what happens, I'm free now. I know that. She smiled through her tears. And you're not free alone. You've got me. When court resumed, the judge spoke calmly, his voice firm. This is not the place for theatrics. What I see here is a young man who gave years of labor without compensation. The law is clear. Unpaid work of this nature is unlawful. While the damages will need to be calculated, I find in favor of the plaintiff, Daniel Carter. The words crashed over me like a tidal wave. I had won. My parents' faces twisted, my mother pale, my father shaking with rage, Matthew staring at me with cold disbelief. But I didn't care. For once, I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at Claire, who smiled through tears as though she had known all along. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered, shouting questions. I ignored them, pulling Claire into my arms. For the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying someone else's burden. I was carrying my own future. And I wasn't carrying it alone. That night, we celebrated with friends at the cafe. Louis clapped me on the back, grinning. Told you, kid. Proof beats power every time. Claire raised her glass, her eyes shimmering in the candlelight. To freedom, she said softly. I lifted mine. To freedom, and to love that makes it worth fighting for. We clinked glasses, laughter spilling into the night. But as the celebration swirled around me, a quiet thought lingered in the back of my mind. Winning in court wasn't the end. My parents had lost their grip, but people like them don't vanish quietly. Yet for the first time, I didn't fear what came next. Because I wasn't their worker anymore. I wasn't their scapegoat, their backbone, their shadow. I was Daniel Carter. And my story, my real story, was just beginning. The weeks after the court victory felt unreal. For so long, I had lived as a shadow, my parents' worker, my siblings' servant, the invisible thread holding their world together. Now I wasn't just free, I was seen. The cafe became more than just a job. Lewis officially promoted me to assistant manager, teaching me not just about coffee and pastries, but about running a business, about leadership. For the first time, people looked to me not because they expected free labor, but because they trusted me. Claire was there every step, her smile like sunlight through every cloud. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me while I worked, her eyes proud, soft, full of love. And every time I'd think, this is what family should feel like. One evening, weeks later, Claire and I walked by the river where we'd shared so many conversations, so many turning points. The water shimmered in the moonlight, the air cool against our skin. "Do you ever think about them?" she asked quietly. I knew who she meant. My parents, Matthew, even Emily. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not with anger anymore, more like relief, relief that I'm not in their prison anymore." Claire squeezed my hand. "They lost you, Daniel. That's their tragedy, not yours." I looked at her then, the woman who had seen me when no one else did, who had stood beside me against storms I thought would drown me. "You saved me," I whispered. She shook her head gently. "No, you saved yourself. I just reminded you who you were." Her words sank deep, healing places I hadn't even realized were bleeding. As the seasons turned, so did our lives. We saved money together, talking about dreams late into the night. Claire wanted to write a book one day, a story about resilience, about love that defied the odds. I wanted to open my own bakery cafe, one not built on chains and silence, but on joy. One where every loaf, every cup of coffee, carried freedom in its flavor. Months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, I knelt on that same riverbank, my hands shaking more than they ever had in court. "Claire," I said, pulling out the small ring I'd saved for, "you've been my anchor, my light, my reason. Will you marry me?" Her gasp caught in the breeze. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered, "Yes, 1,000 times yes." When she fell into my arms, laughter and sobs mixing, I knew then. Love had rewritten my story. I never reconciled with my parents. They tried once to call, but I didn't answer. Some doors need to stay closed for the house to feel like a home. Emily wrote me a letter months later, apologizing again, saying she was trying to break free too. I didn't know if I believed her, but I wished her luck, because no one deserved the prison we'd been raised in. As I stand here now, years later, holding Claire's hand while the sign above our cafe glows with our names, I realize something. My family thought they broke me by forcing me to work for free, while my siblings got everything. But all they really did was build my strength. And when I finally snapped, I didn't just walk away. I walked into a life filled with love, dignity, and freedom. My story isn't one of loss. It's one of becoming,